The knock on the door was sharp and impatient, 3 short raps, like a judge about to sentence someone. My wife looked at me, baby in her arms, and I already knew who it was. There was only one person in our entire neighborhood who knocked like that: Karen, the HOA president, the self-proclaimed guardian of peace, order, and overreaching authority in our little cold-d-sac.I, opened the door, and there she stood. Clipboard in hand, glasses perched on her nose like she was auditioning for a sitcom about power-hungry suburbanites. She gave a tight-lipped smile and cleared her throat. "Good morning," she said. "We need to talk about the noise coming from your home." For a split second, I thought maybe she meant the landscapers across the street or the guy 2 doors down who revved his Harley at 6 in the morning, but no. The look in her eyes, that barely concealed irritation, told me exactly what she meant. "Your baby," she said. The crying. I blinked. My wife, who had come to the door with our daughter, shifted her weight in disbelief. Our little girl, swaddled in a pale blue blanket, blinked up at Karen with big, innocent eyes. The irony of it almost made me laugh. "You're serious?" I asked, already sensing the absurdity of where this was going. Karen nodded, tapping her clipboard. "We've received several complaints. Apparently, the crying has been quite loud and frequent. It's been disrupting people's ability to work from home or enjoy their afternoons." My wife's jaw dropped. "She's a baby. She cries. That's what babies do." Karen didn't flinch. "Yes, well, some of us have jobs that require quiet. Zoom calls, virtual meetings, online presentations. It's hard to concentrate when there's screaming echoing through the neighborhood." Screaming, that was a stretch. Our daughter had colic, yes, but it wasn't constant, and it wasn't like we were blasting a siren out the window. We'd already been doing our best keeping windows closed, using sound machines, holding her for hours, walking laps in the backyard just to soothe her. "We're not neglecting her," I said calmly. "We're doing everything we can, but she's teething. It's a tough phase." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Be that as it may, I've filed a formal noise complaint with the HOA board. If it continues, there will be fines issued $50 a day for repeated violations." My wife stepped forward. "You're threatening us? Over a baby?" Karen sighed like she was the one being wronged. "It's nothing personal. It's just about preserving the neighborhood's tranquility. I hope you understand." No, we didn't understand. In fact, I was floored. I couldn't believe someone could be so heartless, so devoid of empathy, that they'd go out of their way to target a baby. A baby, my daughter, who was barely old enough to sit up, had somehow become a threat to tranquility. Karen left with her usual clipped goodbye and that smug, "I'm just doing my job" smile. We stood there in the foyer, silent, stunned. Then my wife looked at me and said, "She has got to be kidding." She wasn single quotes T. The complaint arrived via email the next day. It was worded professionally, but the intent was clear. Either keep your baby quiet or start paying up. I read it twice, then once more, and every time I felt the same burning mix of anger and disbelief. That night, our daughter cried a little more than usual. Maybe she felt our tension, maybe it was another tooth coming in. My wife walked her for hours, and I played white noise in the background. Still, somewhere across the street, Karen probably sat in her armchair, tallying each cry like a courtroom stenographer. But then, while pacing our bedroom at 6:45 the next morning, I heard them. Karen's dogs, the terriers, the ones we'd all learned to live with. Every day, like clockwork, they'd explode into a barking fit the second anything moved. A truck rumbling down the street, a kid on a bike, a trash bag rustling in the wind, didn't matter. The barkfest would go on for 15, 20, sometimes even 30 minutes. That morning, I listened differently. Not as a neighbor, but as a father. As someone who had just been accused of disturbing the peace. And it hit me ***. Karen's dogs were louder and more consistent than anything my daughter had ever done ***. So, I pulled out my phone and started recording. For the next 7 days, I made it my mission to document the morning. The board president, a quiet but fair man named Mr. Lanning, opened the meeting with a few agenda items. He seemed tired, like most people who have to deal with trivial complaints every day. Eventually, he looked over his glasses and said, "Next. Item: formal noise complaint filed by Karen Underwood against residents at 42 Sycamore Lane regarding excessive infant crying." Karen smiled like a cat who had already eaten the canary. She stood up, cleared her throat, and began. "As many of you know," she said, "I've always advocated for a peaceful, well-maintained neighborhood. That includes not just the physical appearance of our homes, but the overall tranquility of our environment. In recent weeks, the consistent high-volume crying from the infant at 42 Sycamore has disrupted several residents, including myself. I work from home in a sensitive client-facing role, and the noise has become increasingly unmanageable. I filed this complaint not out of malice, but necessity. She said all of this with her hands folded, her tone rehearsed, practiced. She looked around as if waiting for applause. The room stayed silent. That was my moment. I stood up, nodded politely to the board, and walked to the front. Mr. Lanning, members of the board, neighbors, I want to thank you for the opportunity to respond, I began. When my wife and I moved into this community, we knew we'd be raising our daughter here. We also knew that babies cry. It's normal. It's not always convenient, but it's life. And we've done everything we can, soundproofing her room, keeping our windows closed, even changing her nap schedule to avoid disturbing anyone. Karen rolled her eyes. I ignored it. However, I continued. If we're going to talk about noise complaints and disturbances, I'd like to address another source of constant, documented noise: Karen's dogs. That got a few heads turning. I've collected recordings over the past week. Every morning, starting at 6:45 a.m., her two terriers bark for extended periods. I have video footage, audio, and timestamped logs. I also have testimonies from 4 neighbors, including one whose baby has also been woken up repeatedly. I plugged in my flash drive and opened the first video. It was a clip from our front porch, Karen's dogs barking non-stop while she stood on her porch, coffee in hand, doing nothing. Another clip showed them barking at a passing jogger for almost 3 minutes. Another, from a baby monitor, had both barking and a baby crying in the background. The room was dead silent except for the noise from the speakers. The barking was louder than anyone had expected. Longer, too. Karen shifted in her seat, her lips tightening. This is every day, I said. Not occasional, not brief. And this is only from my house. Imagine what the neighbors write next to her here. Then I brought out the neighbor statements. Jessica, the mum next door, had written a heartfelt note describing how her daughter cried every time the dogs went off. Another neighbor said he couldn't make it through a single morning Zoom call without the barking interrupting. One elderly neighbor even said he had to turn up his hearing aids so high to hear the TV over the dogs. He got headaches. Mr. Lanning took off his glasses. Do you have any response to these recordings, Mrs. Underwood? Karen stood up, clearly flustered. Dogs bark. That's what they do. This is completely different from a baby screaming constantly. But, I interrupted, that's just it. It's not different. You claim to value peace and quiet. If my baby crying for 20 minutes a day is a disruption, then dogs barking for 45 minutes every morning certainly is too. Another board member, a middle-aged woman named Carla, chimed in. I live near Karen too. I can back this up. I've been dealing with those dogs since they were puppies. That's when the room started shifting. One by one, more people began voicing their experiences. Some were tired of the barking, others were simply tired of Karen's selective enforcement of HOA rules. A man in the back said he'd once been fined for parking slightly on the grass for 5 minutes, yet Karen had never been fined for her dogs once. Karen tried to regain control. This isn't about my dog.